Okay, welcome everyone. This is session 2B, the Pedagogical Processes, one of the first afternoon sessions. I'm the moderator. My name is Nada Dabab, and we have three presenters. We decided to sit here so that we can all see the presentations. And so the way this is going to work is every presenter will have 20 minutes, and they've agreed pretty much to present for about 15, and then open it up for questions for about 5, and then at the end, when everyone's done, we can open it up for a more encompassing discussion. So our first presenter is David Joyner.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Joyner. I work for Udacity, but I focus on developing classes for Georgia Tech. And I also teach classes at Georgia Tech, and I also run an online lab researching online education. So I do a little bit of everything. So I would say that for many of us, the reason why we work in this space, or what one of our goals is really to impact more students. That's where the massive part of MOOC comes from. So our goal is to have the number of students we're actually having a positive impact on increase. That might be a goal as a result of some other things because we want to increase accessibility or reduce cost, or that might be our goal in and of itself. As an unfortunate side effect, I find that for most of us, that means reducing the amount of staff we actually have per student we have enrolled. We generally don't just hire 500 new people to take care of the 250,000 people we just enrolled. And that's fine. Sorry, give me 1 second to change the way this appears. That's not what I was going for at all. That's better. But that leaves us with a void we have to fill, which is that role of giving expert feedback to students. And so generally we've addressed this in a number of different ways. We've probably looked at peer feedback, we've looked at automated feedback, we've looked at what I call implicit feedback, where you do something once, like give an exemplary assignment and everyone can derive their own feedback from it. And sometimes we give no feedback and we just say, here's the material, enjoy it. And to be perfectly clear, my presentation today isn't criticizing any of this. My background is in intelligent tutoring systems. I love the immediacy and the formative feedback that comes from automated feedback. I've had great success with peer feedback and implicit feedback. So everything I'm talking today isn't a criticism of any of this, but I've seen a couple places do an interesting different approach. And so that's what I'll be talking about today. It's in addition to these instead of in place of these. So today I'm going to be talking about two different programs and their attempts to do this a little bit differently. First I'll be talking about Georgia Tech's online Master's of Science in Computer Science program, and second I'll be talking about Udacity's nano degree programs. What makes these two programs unique is that the material is very advanced, it's very open-ended, and it's very project-based, and so it doesn't lend itself to many of the methods we've seen in the past. Peer review and automated feedback still are pedagogically valuable in certain places here, but they don't guarantee the creditworthiness that Georgia Tech really needs to keep this program accredited, and they don't guarantee job readiness, which Udacity really kind of banks on. So I'm going to start by talking about the Georgia Tech Online Masters of Science in Computer Science program. So quick show of hands, how many of you are familiar with this program? About, looks like a little bit less than half of you. Okay, so I'll give a little bit of background on it. So the Georgia Tech OMSCS program, OMSCS for short, because the other is quite a mouthful. It's a completely online degree, not just a portion of a degree. It's all the classes are available online. You can complete it without ever even visiting the country, let alone Georgia Tech. It's identical in its accreditation to the on-campus program, so you get the same diploma. You don't ever have to tell anyone you got it online. It's the same program. We'll never tell anyone either. It's MOOC-based in that we produce MOOCs that are the foundation for the courses, but there's also a lot wrapped around it. There's projects, there's support from teaching assistants, there's access to professors, the more traditional experience. And the cost of it works out to about $200 a month for 40 months. We recommend students take one class per semester. It runs on a traditional semester system. And, but the really revolutionary part of it is that cost model. It's about 1/7 the equivalent program on campus, which nonetheless is the same degree program. That's what kind of sets it apart. It's at $8,000 for the entire master's degree. Some of you may have seen the article in the New York Times from, I think, 3 days ago about that. So due to that increased accessibility, the program has grown incredibly. It's 4,000 students, 30 classes, up to about 500 students per class, which is small by MOOC standards, but large by this more traditional model. And most remarkably, it has 80% per class retention, which is just a little bit lower than the equivalent on-campus classes. And our data suggests that's mostly for real-world interferences. So I absolutely love this program. So if this model sounds interesting to you and you want to do it, please talk to me because I think we need more of these. So the real goal of this program, though, was to increase the number of students while also keeping the staff per student the same, which means if we wanted to increase from about 400 students the on-campus program was to 4,000, we need to hire more people. But that begs a question. Where do we traditionally get our teaching assistants? Anyone? Yeah, grad students, people who took the class the previous semester most often. They usually did pretty well. The problem was we had a hypothesis. We knew that our online students were older, more educated, more experienced, they are more employed. Anecdotally, they were more likely to have families, and we already said that they were paying far, far less in tuition than their on-campus counterparts. And so we hypothesized that that wasn't going to work anymore. They weren't going to work as teaching assistants. And we found out that we were right about most of this. They are a lot older. Their median age is 38 as opposed to 23. 85% are employed full-time compared to effectively no one on campus. They are more likely to have families, and we know they pay less in tuition. And one of the major benefits of being a TA is getting that tuition waiver. So if you're paying very little in tuition in the first place, that's not nearly as much of an incentive. So all of our reasoning was correct except for our ultimate hypothesis. We were wrong. OMS students were not less likely to work as teaching assistants. In fact, quite the opposite. We have 4 times as many online students applying to work as teaching assistants than we have the capacity to hire, which is actually the opposite of the on-campus program, where every semester we struggle to find enough teaching assistants to let more students take a class. Here we have to turn people away, which is sad, but it's a really nice, sad problem to have. Now, the only explanation for this, or there's 2 possible explanations for this. It could be that our beliefs about TA's motivations in applying were wrong, or it could be that online students are differently motivated than residential students. So show of hands, who thinks it's the first one? That's about what I thought at this conference. So I'm guessing most people would say it's the second one? Yes? And that's exactly what we found. So we did some research on it, basically asked for their motivations when they were applying. Why are you applying for this? What do you hope to get out of it? We found that 2/3 of the residential applicants to serve as TAs in this program said that their primary motivations were financial. And 100% said that at least they were partially motivated by financial incentives. Only 9% of the online students said the same, and that's night and day different. And what's interesting about this to me is this is just about hiring. This isn't about how much we're, this is just about how we're getting these TAs without the usual financial incentive. Anecdotally, I have several TAs in my classes that don't even turn in their timesheets because it's not worth the time to fill out the timesheet to get paid because they're so well compensated in their everyday life. So this is just about the fact that we're able to get these TAs. It says nothing about their quality. What's interesting is that the quality is completely off the charts as well. So one of the classes I teach in the program is educational technology, which is really fun to teach here because it's a bunch of students experiencing educational technology while also learning about it. And if you take my educational technology class, your teaching assistants are the Chief Operating Officer of Macmillan Higher Education, a data scientist at Microsoft Learning Group, an AP Computer Science teacher, and more people that actually have real-world experience actually teaching or doing computer science or doing educational technology, not the people who took the class the previous semester and did pretty well. And I tell them every time I meet with them that my only goal in this is to get out of the way of them interacting with students, because the idea of putting those students in touch with those kind of mentors or those kind of teaching assistants is just, it amazes me every day. But this is really just about the numbers and the fact that we've been able to scale up the program with the traditional model without really having the traditional financial incentive because of their internal motivations. And so the conclusion to that part is that the Georgia Tech OMSCS program can radically increase size while at least preserving student-expert interaction by relying on that intrinsic motivation. The question is, to what extent does that actually generalize to anybody else? Does it work for other online masters? Does it work for online undergraduate? Undergraduate, you wouldn't have professionally qualified people as students in the program who might be able to be hired as TAs. So I don't know if this model will transfer to undergraduate, but I look forward to finding out soon. And does it transfer to non-accredited programs? Coursera, actually, many of you may be familiar with, has a mentor program that's somewhat similar to this, but the mentors are actually volunteers, which takes the motivation element to a new extreme. They're not paid at all, let alone not paid very much. What's interesting here is that these students are reliable enough and committed enough that we're actually able to run an accredited master's program based effectively only on their efforts. So that's the Georgia Tech side of it. To give you a little bit of background, the Georgia Tech stuff that I just explained was mostly my brainchild. I hired the first all-online teaching team. I encouraged other professors to do the same. So everything I just said is basically me just bragging about myself. Everything I'm about to talk about now is the opposite. I'm not actively involved in the nanodegree programs. I'm an internal, external kind of observer. And to be completely honest, I said everything that I'm about to present wouldn't work when they first presented it. So by presenting the fact that it does work, I'm saying that I was wrong. So show of hands real quick again. How many of you are familiar with Udacity's nanodegree program? I guess first, how many are familiar with Udacity as a whole? It's pretty much everybody. How many are familiar with Udacity's nanodegree programs more specifically? So about half. So I think most people are probably familiar with Udacity as one of the first MOOC developers that recently pivoted to doing something a little bit more vocational. So Udacity's nanodegree programs are vocational credentials. Like the LMS program, they are MOOC-based, but there's more. There's projects, there's support from forum mentors, things like that. Everything is still graded by experts. Similar model, similar cost. It's also $200 a month. These programs are at about over 10,000 students across 13 nanodegree programs that are developed with industry partners. And what's most remarkable and insane, and I can say that because again, I'm not involved, is that 6 of the nanodegree programs have job guarantees. Get a job within 6 months of finishing the program, or we give you all your money back. So the goal here though, was to take what the Georgia Tech program did to another extreme. Not only increase the size while maintaining the amount of expert interaction, but actually increasing the amount of expert interaction. And that appears in 2 different ways. One is through forum mentors, similar to the Coursera forum mentors, except these are actually paid. Every question a student asks or every participation that they have is kind of added to a queue for mentors to actually be paid for contributing to and participating with the students on these forums. So they would receive those questions, give an answer, and get paid based on their interactions. That's kind of a new system. The one I'm more amazed at, honestly, is the project reviewer system. This is specifically the one that I said wouldn't work. Similarly, whenever a student submits a project, it's dumped into a big list of projects available for grading. This network of project reviewers can grab them whenever they need to. And I'm sorry, is that 5 until 20 or until 15?
Till 15.
Gotcha. Just curious. I can grab them as they come on and grade them right then, and return the review to students and get paid per review that they actually give. So this is really based around this idea of having a project reviewer network. It's a bunch of people all over the world, on demand anytime. So the real distinction is that rather than a closed teaching team where we assign work more deliberately, where at the beginning of each week I'll assign to each of my graders the assignments they're to grade, this workforce is on demand and it's automatically receiving assignments as they're submitted by students. And so reviewers can directly claim the submissions as opposed to being assigned to them. The workforce is dynamically allocated. You're not unreasonable if you compare it to Uber, in that if suddenly we unexpectedly had 15 people all submit a project on the same night and there's only 5 people who are qualified to review that project, then suddenly they're getting paid 3 times as much to review those projects because there's a surge. Like the Georgia Tech program, it's also staffed by professionals in this area, which is quite competitive to do because they're generally in very advanced fields where they're paid very competitively as well. And what I love most about this is that it really develops a nice cycle of formative feedback. Students get feedback very, very rapidly. They're allowed to iterate on their projects and reattempt them and resubmit them as many times as it takes to actually pass. There's no deadline, there's no grading, nothing like that. And as a result, the feedback you get is really formative, that every time you get a review back from a project reviewer, it's to help you improve on that project and improve going forward, as opposed to the traditional model of you failed, move on to the next project, better luck next time, hopefully you won't fail the class. So that's what I love most about this, is that it kind of takes failure off the table. If you need to attempt it more times, you have the freedom to do so. The program has been, in my opinion, an outstanding success. The median turnaround time for projects is 92 minutes. In my classes, we consider it really, really awesome if we can get grades back to students within 5 days. This means that you can take an episode of Daredevil and come back and you already have a review back on your project. Student satisfaction is incredibly high. It's self-report, so it's a little suspect, but they aren't complaining at least. This system is grading 650 projects every single day in fields like machine learning, web development, Android development, virtual reality is coming soon. That amounts to a project every 2 minutes. And the top paid reviewer paid by the system is paid the equivalent of $4,500 a week, which, if you don't want to do the math, is $200,000 a year. So I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing when I could be doing that instead. And so by all metrics, this seems to be a impressive success. I love it pedagogically because it gets students such a rapid feedback. The reviewers love it because they get paid quite nicely, and the students love it because they get to actually iterate on it as opposed to failing once and being done with it. So Udacity's network model has really dramatically increased the volume, rapidity, and in my opinion, the quality of the student-expert interaction, while also increasing the size of the program. excuse me. What remains to be seen is the extent to which this can be generalized out to other MOOC platforms, accredited programs, and non-computing fields where it doesn't lend itself as naturally to online education, and really to anyone that doesn't have the pockets that Udacity has, because this amounts to when you have a lot of money to throw at this and figure out what works and how we can build a really nice experience, you can do some real cool things, but how sustainable is that? So there's some luxuries here that don't necessarily generalize. So in conclusion, I've presented two different ways of scaling up the human expert's role in large online programs. Georgia Tech has managed to maintain the amount of student expert interaction. I actually think it's improved, but that's a different presentation, by leveraging those intrinsic motivations of TAs, of online TAs. And Udacity has done it by just completely throwing out the old model, changing to a new model, adopting the gig economy, paying a la carte for different reviews, and things like that. So if you want to hear more, if any of you were at Learning at Scale, you know this. Learning at Scale last year had a flip track where you film your presentation in advance and put it online, and it's alive forever. And so there were actually dedicated presentations about Georgia Tech and Udacity there. The URLs are here. You're welcome to go. They're all up on Open edX, or edX Edge, I guess, so you can see them there. Feel free to email me or just check out the other publications we have about these programs on my lab website. So that's all I got.
Questions for David? Did you?
Oh, great. Sorry, I didn't know. Go ahead, Dave. Great presentation, exciting. Tell me a little bit about how you manage QA and training for the reviewers.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that is the main focus on that right presentation. So if you want to hear about it in full detail, see it there. But it's generally that they initially apply to be reviewers either because they're industry professionals or because they've completed and been exemplary within the program and gotten hired, which I guess still makes them industry professionals. They go through a training process, a course on giving good feedback. They're given about 4 sample submissions to review that we've already reviewed. Our internal people, actually, I take that back. Now it's super reviewers review their reviews and compare them to the ideal reviews and make sure they are good enough, high quality, etc. And then, and I could be getting this part a little bit wrong, this is the general setup, I might get the numbers wrong. Whenever a reviewer gets more than 3 sub 4 reviews within 1 week, someone internal to Udacity reviews their work and makes sure these were just, this is a fluke, they're not slacking off. If they were slacking off, I think they get a warning, and if they do it again, they do that. And then the student gets new reviews, which is the nice thing about the low cost of failure. So.
Yeah, it's really that. So, done this in the legal space and created 100,000 essays in a few weeks. And, issues around, certifying and then maintaining quality and so forth. Do you find, I missed this, did you say that students review their own reviews? Is there a grade to graders? Yes,
there is. So that's was the 4.9 out of 5 satisfaction was the, what I call meta review. Okay, so there are students giving it.
And then you can look at that and see if there's 4 reviews there. Okay, that's useful.
Yes, the stats that you have on the page, is that based on the machine learning program?
No, I'm sorry, this is all of them. So I just used the logo for the machine learning one because we don't have a general nanodegree logo.
All of them, you mean all Udacity programs?
All 13 Udacity nanodegree programs, yeah.
So for the project review, how many reviewers are assigned to each project? Only one?
Only one reviewer, yes. So each review comes in, a reviewer grades it, sends it back.
Even with one, it's 4.9.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how do you achieve an efficient Q&A process, especially during the process of students doing their projects? Because I began learning programming this semester, and although we're using a forum called Piazza, which is, I think, very efficient than traditional forums, but I still feel that when I encountered a bug, I want to communicate face-to-face with a TA.
Yeah.
And think that's much more helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the Georgia Tech side, actually, we use Piazza as well, and I have the world's biggest love-hate relationship with Piazza. I love the function it provides. I love the way it lets you peruse and kind of browse as opposed to needing directed read. But you're right, it's noisy in large classes. Udacity uses something called Discourse, which is another forum tool. I know the workflow they have surrounding the forum mentors about how they're paid per question that they answer, as well as to spawn discussion in some places and things like that. I don't know about how well the tool works compared to Piazza. I've used it a little bit, didn't like it as much, but I have my own biases and priorities. So I'm not entirely sure how the technological workflow works, just the hiring workflow behind it.
I think the barrier is that it's not allowed to post code on public forums. So sometimes we need private one-on-one guidance. So I think that's very hard to achieve.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I know one of our classes in the OMS program actually has had success for more rote question and answer using Zendesk as opposed to a forum. So questions are literally tickets that OTA resolves. But
Do you know the total number of reviewers for every nano degree at Udacity, or do they do it per degree, per course, per week?
Yeah, so reviewers are certified by project, and each nano degree has multiple projects. I don't know more finely grained than how many total there are in there. I think there are about 180 total reviewers worldwide.
For all of it?
Yeah, for all the programs. So.
How do you manage, or how does, I guess, Udacity manage the queue for things that need to be reviewed? Is that also a Zendesk thing?
It works kind of like Zendesk. You mean the projects that need to be reviewed? Yeah, it works kind of like Zendesk. It's basically a dashboard that lists you as the reviewer. Here are the projects you're certified to review. Here are the number waiting for each one. Click here to claim the next one. Click it, you claim it, you're graded. If you can't grade it, you return it, it goes back to the pile. Honestly, it never really works that way because in my experience, a project never sits on the pile for more than maybe 20 minutes. And so there's rarely more than one available. So it's a nice supply and demand problem.
Okay, any other questions? Let's leave them when we do the open questioning. Our next presenter is Yao Jiang, Penn State. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yao Xiong, a PhD student from Penn State University, and I'm gonna present part of the dissertation results I have on modeling peer assessment in a MOOC using a Bayesian item response theory approach. So in Coursera, I think we rely a lot on peer assessment for especially the open-ended assignments, because we don't have enough experts to grade all of the tens of thousands of student assignments. So, and then there are several features for the peer assessment in MOOC. First, the data is very sparse because every peer rater is only gonna rate a handful of assignments, 3 to 5, because they are not paid. And also peer raters, they are not we're not selective, not like the Udacity and Georgia Tech program, they select the reviewer, but all the students who submitted the assignment, they're eligible to grade each other. So people also worried about the reliability and the validity of the peer raters because they are still novice learners, they're not experts. So the purpose of my study is to apply an appropriate model to estimate the submission choose score after accounting for the rater error with the sparse data from a MOOC. So I used a graded response rater model, which is the item response theory model. That's one of the most popular models that's used in educational management to calibrate student chewability. And I added a rater effect to the model, which is the delta J, which is a leniency or severity, or sometimes we call it systematic bias for each rater. And the PNIJK is the probability of student N receiving rating K on item I from rater J. And the Y is the observed rating for student N by rater J on item I. And also have a theta is the true estimated score. Gamma is the step parameter, a threshold parameter for each item, because the item is graded on a scale, not a binary score. And I run the simulation study by simulating 100 students or 1,000 students, and the students are both raters and ratees. And they're rating each submission on 4 criterion, and each with a 5-point scale. And I simulated 3 different rating design. The first one is randomly assign 5 submissions to each rater. At the same time, each submission is being rated by 5 raters, so which results in 95% for the 100 sample size and 99.5% for the 1,000 sample size missing data. And the second rating design is to add additional error-free instructor rating to the, when I say error-free, that is without like systematic bias. They still have random error to the rating. And the third design is to have 2 common peer submissions that graded by all of the raters, and plus 3 additional assignments graded by each rater, and resulting in the same amount of missing data. And I replicate each scenario for 50 times. I use the Bayesian procedure to estimate the parameters with most of them are normal priors, and use half-Hashi for the standard deviation parameters, and use the STAN, which embedded with the Hamiltonian Monte Carlo algorithm to estimate posterior, and with burning, thinning, and different 3 chains to do the inferences. And this is the simulation results for the 2, 100,000 sample size. And I used the 3 criteria to evaluate the results. So first is a correlation between the true and estimated parameter, and root mean square error between true and estimated parameter, as well as the coverage rate, which is like 95% of Bayesian credibility, whether this credibility interval covers the true parameter value. And I separately look at the theta, delta, and the gamma, which is the true score, the rater leniency and severity, and the threshold parameter for each rating criteria. And we can see the gamma parameter are almost like well recovered because correlation is almost 1, and the coverage rate is almost 1. And the root mean square error is smaller than theta and delta. But for theta, it looks like adding the expert rating to the model will increase the accuracy for estimating of true score. And using 2 common assignments will increase the accuracy of the rater parameters. And this is the graphic display for the 100 sample size. And you can see the blue is for the theta. And with the 2 common assignments, actually the theta scores are worse estimated. And it will be improved by adding the expert rating. And the gamma will be consistent. And the delta will be increased, the accuracy will be increased after adding the 2 common assignments. And this is a similar pattern for a 1,000 sample size, except the delta looks more consistent, not much change. So the summary for the simulation today is that this graded response IRT model is robust for sparse peer rating, because even with 99.5% of the missing data, all of the parameters are still accurately estimated to a large extent. And item threshold parameter, which are the gamma parameter, are more accurately estimated than the other parameters. And also adding expert rating in the model will increase the accuracy, but have 2 common assignments will increase the accuracy of rater parameters. So if the purpose is to calibrate the rater behavior, it might be a good idea to add some common assignments graded by all of them. But if the goal is to increase the accuracy for the true score parameter, then maybe adding some of the more accurate expert rating will be a good idea. And I also use this model in a real-life application, which is a 5-week Penn State MOOC offered through the Coursera platform in 2013. And I pull out the peer assessment data from the final assignments, which is like create a map. The assignment for all of the students, although like thousands of students enrolled in the course, only 1,225 students submitted the final assignment and involved in the peer assessment. Since in the real life application, it's not like the simulation. We don't really know like what is the true score for the student, what is the true bias for the rater. So I used additional measures as an external criterion to validate the estimation results. For example, I used part of instructor-rated assignments, 124, to look at the relation between the expert rating and those estimated scores. And I also used student engagement behaviors, like the video they watched, the number of questions they posted on the forum, and how frequently they followed up on the forum question, and also the weekly performance for the students. And here are the correlation with the estimated parameter scores with the expert rating. So it's actually a high correlation, the theta score with the expert rating. It's 0.987. So that means the estimated true assignment score actually have a high correlation with the expert score. Not perfect, but very high. And the delta has a significant negative correlation with the instructor score, but not very big, just a small correlation. And I use structural equation modeling to look at the relation between student engagement and weekly performance with the estimated theta and the delta score. So I pick up a first week and the week at middle and the final week data in this model. And I assume the hypothesis is that the engagement with the theta score should be positive, but with the delta score should be negative. That means the more engaged the student is in the course, that means like you will have a better understanding about the course material, and the more severe he would be in terms of grading. And those are the results. Most of the relation between the engagement and quiz performance with the theta are supported. They are positive and significant. But none of the relation between those course engagement data with delta is supported, although many of them are negative, but none of them are significant. And 20% of the theta score is explained by the course engagement data. And I also have a second hypothetical model, which is not a pick up the data from week by week, but separate the engagement based on the different types of engagement. For example, how frequently they post on the forum and how much comments they followed up on the forum, and how many videos they watched, and also their quiz performance. And using the same logic, I think the relation with the theta will be positive, but the relation with delta will be negative. And here are the results for the second model. It's similar to the first one. Most of the relation with theta are supported, but only one relation with the delta is supported, which is the lecture watching with the delta, which means the more lecture videos a rater watch during the course, the more severe he will be in terms of grading.
5 minutes.
Okay, so summary of real-life application is that the estimated theta score is highly correlated with expert rating, and the estimated delta score are correlated with expert rating in the negative direction. And the theta score, which is the estimated summation true score, can be predicted to a large extent, around 20%. Variance explained by the course engagement and quiz performance. But the estimated delta score, on the other hand, cannot be explained much, except one significant coefficient found, that the more video lectures the rater watched, the more severe he was in terms of grading. That is consistent with our hypothesis, because we think like the more engaged a student is in the course, he will be like more knowledgeable and will be more able to, to pick up those, to find out those like misunderstanding or misconception that might occur from the peers' assignment. And that is it. Do you have any question?
Actually, I have a question. So the two common assignments, when you say common assignments, was that when you asked the expert and the peer to review the same assignment, but two of them, or?
In that sense, there's no expert. So just add like two assignments that's graded by all of the students. So that because usually in the MOOC, they're all usually randomly assigned some assignments to grade. So there is no common assignments graded by all of them. But I simulated a scenario when all of the students grade two same assignments.
Any other questions for Yao? Okay, thank you very much.
I have
More questions?
So all the experts that you used in the study were other students, or were any faculty involved as well?
So the experts I use in the simulation study is I simulate the expert rating, so which is like without any systematic bias. So they are like more accurate than the peer raters.
So the results in the end were the same. The peer reviews were pretty much on par with the simulated expert review, right?
In the real life application, yes. So they are highly correlated.
I good. Yep. Any other questions? Okay.
I have a
Yes.
question.
Yeah.
This was really a bit hard for me to follow. So
Sorry.
what I would want is just an overall, like, just tell me like both scenarios. What do you think is more important for us as takeaways for people who are not very research oriented? Like as a takeaway, what would you suggest in regard to assessment?
So I think so if you are interested like in the student like raters behavior, maybe it's a good idea to add some common assignment because that will be able to calibrate them in the same matrix, and you will know like some of them are very very lenient, some of them maybe are very severe, and if you want to increase the accuracy of the peer rating and the estimation, maybe add some expert in the data will help. Because usually the peers, they are still novice learner, and people may not be like, we were still worried about the validity and the reliability of the large scale like peer raters.
Great. Thank you very much, Yao. We have to leave that for the open discussion, sorry, so we can give every presenter their fair share.
Thank
So
you for
the-
the discussion.
Our next presenter is Catherine. A few presenters, but Catherine is the lead on this presentation.
All right. Let's see. So my name is Catherine, and I work at the Media Lab at MIT. And today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a tool that we have been designing and developing there that's called UnHangout. The goal of this tool is to create a space for people to host participatory discussion-based events online. But sort of in keeping with the theme of the session that we're in right now, I wanted to start off by talking about how there's pedagogy that is embedded in technology, and that this is something that I find useful to always sort of be keeping in mind as I continue to work in the learning technology space. This idea that when we offer tools and technologies for learning in spaces online, we're putting forth these ideas and these pedagogical choices that will impact the learning experience that the students who are coming to our experiences have. But it also says a lot about how we as designers and educators are thinking about teaching and learning. So an example of this is sort of we see a lot of these MOOC platforms that were designed from the very beginning to be a place for courses that are defined in terms of their content. The courses don't have to be defined in terms of their content. They could be defined in terms of the people that they bring together. But this is an explicit pedagogical choice that was made when that platform was designed. Often in these types of platforms, we see unidirectional video lectures or automated assessments, and these types of things they reinforce a very individualistic and consumption-based pedagogy as sort of embedded throughout the learning experience. So in the work that I do at the Media Lab, my team focuses on designing online learning environments and tools that start from people as opposed to content. And one goal of this work is that we want to build tools that we can use in our online learning offerings. So a lot of this is motivated by these are the kinds of tools that we want to see for the kinds of learning that we care about. But another goal is sort of this idea that we think it's important for there to be people working in this field who can demonstrate that online learning doesn't have to only look like an LMS, that there are other alternatives out there that are worth pursuing and that are interesting to learn about and see if that sort of fits your pedagogical viewpoint. So one thing I'll say about our approach to online learning is that we envision sort of not like a monolithic walled garden learning platform. We're sort of more inspired by like the structure of the internet itself, the network, original connectivist MOOCs, where there are learning tools that can sort of be tied together and mixed and matched in different ways to create different learning environments that have different goals with different people. So we think about people first rather than content. We're thinking about community rather than transmission. And so the pedagogy that we think about that is embedded in these tools is one of participatory community-based learning. So these are the things that we care about seeing the most in our learning experiences. So I'm going to focus on one tool that we've built that sort of exists in this imaginary world of all of these really cool tools. And that tool really came from a real need that we had. The story of the tool is important to understanding how it is now because we developed it with a group of people and it was a project because we needed it. So we work with Mitch Resnick to put together an online course back in 2013 called Learning Creative Learning. And it was a course that he'd been teaching at the Media Lab for like 20 years. And as we looked around online and wanted to put it online and sort of capture the spirit of these pedagogical things that we care about, we couldn't find a tool that really allowed our learners to be talking with each other. And that is something that is just so key to our learning experiences that we sort of couldn't go without it. So we developed a very rough prototype that basically was just 40-person chat rooms could exist, and they allowed you to sort of be talking with other students who were online while watching a live stream of Mitch interviewing and having a conversation with someone in the room. And we saw really interesting things sort of emerge out of just putting this tool out there. We found that students were opening up multiple tabs and kept clicking this change room button so they could get into a room where the conversation that was happening was one that was sort of related to their interests. They were sort of interesting in sort of getting a scope of what everyone was talking about and then picking where they wanted to be. And when we saw that, it really reminded us of the unconference model, where instead of having sort of a preset schedule of speakers and things, you bring a community of people together who are interested in the same things and let them have a schedule building session at the beginning where they can sort of hash out what they want to teach, what they want to learn. People can vote, and then they build a schedule together, and then you get a very good overview of what is being discussed at the conference, and you can choose where you go from there. So that's sort of the background story to how we ended up building Unhangout. It's a lot of the inspiration for what is now in the tool. And I guess I just wanted to now give you guys a little bit of an overview of what the platform does. So this is what it looks like. This is a screenshot from one of our recent events. This page that you're seeing is something that we call the lobby, and it has just a few main components. It's pretty simple. There's a video window where you can embed a live or pre-recorded video. There is a chat where everyone in the room can talk with each other. There's a display of the people who are connected to the page, and you can sort of mouse over everyone's picture and see who they are. And then there's this section of what we call Breakout Rooms, which allows people to propose things that they want to talk about, or even just to have a set of standard rooms that people can go into and have small group conversations. So this lobby page can support up to 200 people. And the breakout rooms can each, we originally used Google Hangouts, so we can support 10 people, because that's what Google Hangouts supports. And so the other thing is that these breakout rooms sort of exist sort of like as satellites around the lobby. So, you know, you start out, most of our events take the form of starting out in a large group, sort of 200 people talking about, hearing a little bit from a presenter, having a topic or activity posed to them. They find a room that they want to be in, they break out for the majority of the event, talking with each other, working with each other, and then they come back for a reflection period where they can sort of get a sense of what was discussed in the other rooms and what sort of themes have emerged from the event. And as we've been running events on this platform, we've been trying to sort of be better at articulating sort of why we make the design choices that we do and why we think that this is an interesting tool. And so I'll try some of these out on you guys today, but I think some of the design values of the Hangout platform are the fact that these events are synchronous. There's something really special about gathering a group of people who are all interested in the same thing because they're in the same online course, for example, together in a synchronous place. We see that it's a very powerful experience for building community, and we hypothesize that that is really important for motivating students to stay engaged and learn. We also put participation at the forefront of our design values. We want to see as many places in this tool as possible that are actionable for a user that comes. So it's not just a place where they come to receive content, but that there are multiple places in different ways that they can add their own voice, whether it be putting their a thought that they have in the chat, picking a breakout room that they want to join, voting on a breakout room that they think is interesting, adding someone that they see to their network, which is another feature that we have. And I think one of the other interesting design values is this idea about the relationship between scale and intimacy for community. We have the big lobby space, which is for 200 people, but then we have these small breakout rooms that are for 10 people. And we've seen that there's something really special about the relationship between these two spaces and how they can sort of exist side by side. In the large community space, people are able to sort of get that overview that they want of what everyone is talking about. They get a sense of sort of the diversity of the broad community that they're a part of. But when they go into a breakout room, they get to pick something that they're specifically interested in, and they get to see and hear people and have sort of a more intimate conversation. And that together, these two types of spaces that we're creating in these events really help build community because of the relationship between the sizes. And so really all this comes back, these design values come back to informing the fact that we want to create a space for participatory community-based learning to happen. And so it's all sort of in service of that pedagogy. So since we launched the platform, we've had about 24,000 users, which is very exciting to us. They've participated in hundreds of events. And we've seen, this is something that we developed sort of to use in our own courses, but we also put it out openly available. It's an open source project, so it could be forked and run on your own servers, but we also host our own version that anyone can sort of go and create an event on their own. And we've seen tons of different people using it. So we've gotten a lot of interest from the MOOC world of people who want to add these sort of more community participatory experiences to their courses, and they do it in tons of different ways. One of the interesting things that we have also seen about this tool is that it's not only MOOC providers who are interested in using it. This aspect of community building is applicable in tons of other spaces, and I think that that is really interesting because there are so many aspects about learning experiences that aren't just about education and learning and courses in school that happen throughout your life in all different contexts. And so it's interesting that we can see a tool like this being used by people like Little Bits, which is a technology company. They host monthly community calls. The National Writing Project does teacher trainings on the platform. EdCamps does a grassroots teacher professional development on conference style PD on the platform. And then in terms of the MOOCs that we see using this tool, people are using it in so many different ways, and it's really inspiring for us as the tool designers just to see what people will do with it when we put it out. So we worked with Leaders of Learning at Harvard X, and they used this tool to host a big culmination event at the end of their meeting, sort of as a way to hear from the professor, hear wrap up and basically get reflections on the whole process and have a nice sort of culmination to their course. We also worked with another course called Jury X, where they held weekly, multiple unhangout opportunities per week where you could come and get with a group of peers and have a mock jury deliberation about a social issue. We've used this tool in subsequent rounds of Learning Creative Learning at the Media Lab, where we had weekly meetings for students to come and get feedback from their peers about the project that they were working on. And we also have seen just recently a course at MIT, which is like an intro to computer science course, use it as sort of like a always open place where you can come and get help from other people in the class, talk with TAs and other students. And so, like I said, this tool is available for anyone to use. You can check us out on our website. We are also always thinking about the future, so just a few quick notes to sort of wrap up. And we're hoping to very soon move away from Google because there are a lot of constraints that come in with the use of Google. There are a lot of countries that don't have access to Google, so we're trying to move to a more open web RTC, which is a new web standard that has video. In terms of research, we want to sort of look at how these values that we think are embedded in the design of the platform, we want to see how these features are embodied in the platform. We want to understand how they sort of help to build a sense of community for the people who come to these events. And then in terms of design, we're also very interested in thinking about making participation comfortable for every user, not just the people who are sort of more inclined to participate anyway, because we do see that there's always a certain amount of people who are sort of lurking and listening, and we want to see if there's ways that we can get them to do something. And I guess I'll just end with a quote that we had from someone, an interviewee in a research study, who said that interacting in a purely digital, out-of-sync environment always feels somewhat distant and impersonal. Seeing and hearing actual people in all their diversity reminded me of the enormous potential and the resources which this diversity brought to the course. So this was a response to sort of how they felt about being able to participate in an Hangout, and this is really sort of the motivating thing that drives all of our work and the type of environment that we're striving to create. So that's it. Thank you.
Some questions for Catherine? Yes.
Yeah, what kind of interventions are you, or have you ever done in this kind of hangout experiences?
What do you mean by interventions?
For instance, the group forms, but maybe they just stay there and do nothing and whatever. Is there anything that you're doing in that regard, or how does actually the groups behave on your experiments?
I think we're not necessarily trying to design interventions, but the idea is sort of that there are multiple places in the platform where you can go if you encounter a situation like that. So instead of trying to create a model where a user in an Hangout ends up in a group and no one's really talking and it's weird, or no one ever shows, no one ends up getting in there because there are technical problems. Instead of framing that sort of as the people who are running the Hangout need to fix this for me, we try and create an environment where it's I don't know, where it just feels like you're coming to this event and things happen. So there are multiple places where you can go and get feedback. We ask for people to give us feedback or tell us about the problems that they're having in the chat. We try and help them and offer them solutions like, oh, try and join this other room. You can try and restart your browser and do this thing. So we don't so much design interventions in that way. We have thought about sort of another project probably separate from this would be sort of how can you get people once they're in their breakout rooms to have good conversations, or what does a good conversation look like? We're going to talk about sort of maybe designing tools to help facilitate, because we've seen people use facilitators in the breakout rooms, and we've seen people use no facilitators in the breakout rooms, and it's definitely a different experience. So I think sort of a side research path might be sort of thinking about that.
Yes.
Do you expect the students to have conversation while the video's playing, or after it?
So in the lobby, the large group space, the chat sort of takes up a lot of the screen real estate, and so we're hoping that people are talking there during the video. The idea, I think, on the whole is that the video won't contain so much content heavy, really important, you need to listen to every single detail, that people need to be so much paying attention that they can't also sort of be participating in the chat. So mostly what it is like organizers welcoming people, saying like, this is what we're gonna do today, talk in the chat, introduce yourself, here's a prompt for discussion, and then go talk in the small groups.
Yeah.
And we try to, when we help design events with organizers, we try to, people are very inclined to turn it into like a webinar where they're like really transmitting information to the people who come, and we try and push them more in a direction of just like talking for a really little, short amount of time, just so it feels like the event starts. But then mostly letting all of the participants talk with each other for the majority of the event. But it's hard, people want to use it as like a webinar transmission format. We struggle with trying to get people to understand that it's a little bit of a different model.
Do you get any student frustration that they can't join a room because it's already got the 10 participants in?
You know, honestly, not too much that we get informal channels. I think we usually try and be very helpful to it when that happens. So we'll create a new room with the same topic. We'll try and get some people from that other room to join the new room. And we found that we really try and make it feel like it's not a very like administrated space.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, and this is sort of just my natural impression of the platform, people are very much more willing to encounter problems when they feel like they're in charge of how the event is going. They don't see the event organizers as being the ones who are delivering them an event because it's really about them talking with each other. So I think that it's a different attitude that people have. And so like when those types of things happen, they're more like, oh man, darn it, I couldn't get in. Like, I'll just go in this other room. So it's interesting, yeah.
I remember being in one of these last February in an educational design MOOC, and I was trying to, I can't remember now. I feel like the video, like the breakout sessions, there was a video. They were each being led by a course moderator, somebody on your team or on the course team.
Yeah.
So they reminded me a little bit of like if you have a college classroom, you have like the Friday breakout sessions with the TAs kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I wondered if, just how you been describing how you were designing it, I wondered if you're planning then for it to be something that students can just start up for each other. Like, is it something that only like TAs or moderators would set up, or can student groups get together and set them up for, to bring people together?
Well, on the whole, so typically, the typical model that we see is sort of like the event-based style needs to be organized by someone. So they're not necessarily like an admin, or they tend to be the course people who are administrating the course, but they're just sort of like the logistical leaders, and they're the ones who send out the emails that say, come at this time, here's the link, here's what you need to do. And some people within the event do have this very highly facilitated model where they have facilitators in each breakout room to help conversation, and then that's great. But we've also seen, like when we ran Learning Creative Learning, we saw some people who met each other in the Unhangout and really liked it, and then they requested to run their own Unhangout. And so there was a subgroup of people who were in Italy taking the course, and they wanted to offer the ideas of the community to more people in their broader community, have an Italian Unhangout. And so they were able to sort of just request that platform and use it. So I don't think we see that as much, because I think maybe students don't realize that they could do that.
Right.
But it's definitely happened before, yeah.
That's very cool.
So I'm going to ask the presenters just to sit there so we can continue the conversation if we might. And we have about 15 minutes if you want to share some of your insights as well with the group. And this is the session on new pedagogical processes. And I think, in terms of pedagogical processes, we've had discussions or presentations about peer reviews, peer assessments, and this participatory community-based framework, if you will, that can all help us with how might we interject new pedagogical processes in MOOCs or scalable courses and communities. So I was wondering if you have questions or if you guys have something you want to share more. So I guess I'll start with a question for Catherine. Also, I was wondering what prompted the Hangout? I mean, it sounds like you still use Google Hangouts. And was it a user experience design? Was it not a satisfaction with some Google Hangouts, or what was the problem that you were trying to solve?
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, I I guess I didn't make this very obvious, but the name Unhangout came from this idea that we were very inspired by unconferences, but then we are also using Google Hangouts. So it's really like a mashup of those two things. And the problem that we saw was that Google offered Google Hangouts, which were up to 10-person video conversations, like similar to what you could have on Skype. And then they also offered Hangouts on Air, which you could broadcast up to 10 people, and then anyone could sort of tune in live, but there's no interaction amongst the viewers who are viewing. And so that was the problem that we saw. It was like we wanted there to be a larger group space, and also the small group space, but in the larger group space, we wanted the people who were there to be talking with each other, and that to be the core of the interaction as opposed to the watching of the video. So we couldn't find a tool that did that. So that's why we built this one.
Just following on that, it does seem that what you're creating is the MOOC seminar versus the MOOC lecture. And the open space concept or the unconference is a way to generate learning from the people as opposed to, yes, there's a topic or a theme or something that's attracted you, that's the pull, but then it's the learning is really emergent, in the people in the group. And we're trying to do that because we're doing a Coursera on Teams, and we don't want to have a talking head talking about Teams. We want conversations. But I would think that the 10 limit on Hangout is a real obstacle. I'm sort of following with your 20, 30. Is there no vehicle out there that can put 20 or 30?
In sort of like a video-based talking.
Well, I'm just looking at this idea of on a seminar, how to do that, but it's, even in my residential seminars, they would barely let me run it with less than 8 people. I need a certain amount of flow, and yet 20 is a big seminar, but online I would think we need 18 to 20 to 30 people in this kind of space.
Yeah, so the Unhangout tool was sort of designed, the lobby space, which is just the chat and the video, and then the ability to go out into breakout rooms, can support 200 people. And then, in my experience, what I've found is that if you want people to have small group conversations, that 10 is actually quite a lot to try and chime in, especially when you're online, because people sort of have that additional barrier of not really knowing what the social norms are in video chats. So I actually think that like 6 people is good in a video chat online conversation. But I've seen people make it work sort of in various ways, but I'm not sure.
I guess my point is, in an unconference, people vote with their feet. If there's a good conversation in this room, great, I'm here. But if I'm not, I'm going to go find another one.
Yeah.
And if they all try to get into one that is limited to 10, then that's an issue.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a question for David. You explained a little bit about how the project evaluators work, and you said that they go into a training process at the very beginning. Can you explain a little bit more? Because I think that's a key part in order to make this scale up, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's interesting. The way that training process is modeled, it's modeled after what they're being trained to do, which is nice and delightfully meta. They're kind of trained to be good project reviewers by going through a project reviewer process and getting the feedback the same way. So they go through kind of a traditional normal course that's just kind of what I would describe as the basics of giving feedback, the idea of giving positive feedback as well as negative feedback. It's easy to fall into the trap of just giving critiques, things like that. Just how to give good feedback, but it's just kind of a traditional course-like model. The bigger part of it is they take on some pre-graded projects to grade, and those are graded on. They grade those and submit them to our own reviewers, who then review their review and train them to review projects the same way they will then review other projects and give them feedback that not only is about the quality of their feedback, but demonstrates how to give feedback better, which is difficult to talk about because feedback is everywhere. But so yeah, it's more of that kind of. I would almost describe it as more of a little bit more of an apprenticeship process. It's not full apprenticeship because you're not watching someone just creating authentic projects, but you are then seeing the authentic projects that were graded as compared to your own reviews.
How long does it take the training?
Usually it takes about 2 weeks. It's really up to the actual reviewers. We've had some go through in a couple days because they just sit down and do it. Probably takes about 15, 20 hours to actually take the course and then do the reviews, submit them, get your own back, do it again until you're good enough.
So if you're a super reviewer, like think like this reviewer will always have, very different review, and then this reviewer, will they be rejected like you're not qualified?
Usually not rejected. Usually it's trained more. And as far as I know, we've never given an explicit rejection. We have had people basically say, "I'm not going to get this," and that's in this context. I wouldn't consider that as bad as it would be in a traditional educational context because this is teaching, and I'd rather you recognize that you don't enjoy teaching or you're not willing to put in the work to do it well than do it anyway for the money. So it usually ends up being more of if you keep not either matching their feedback or not getting great feedback or not getting helpful feedback, you kind of fall out and rejected. So.
Question for David. In Udacity world, who and how identifies whether reviewers are qualified to grade certain projects?
Sorry, I missed the first part of that.
In Udacity world, so who and how identifies whether reviewers are qualified to grade projects? Whether they're qualified as experts?
Gotcha. So it's generally from two places. It's either industry professionals is usually the case, or it's people who have completed our own programs and there's enough trust in our own programs to believe they know what they're talking about. If we didn't hire them, then there's probably something wrong with our programs. But no, it's usually those for early nano degrees that have just launched. It's all professionals because there's no graduates to draw from. But they're vetted by internal Udacity employees who themselves were developing the material. And very often they'll actually do the early project reviews to get things off the ground.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, David, you again. You showed that was a great slide of what you expected the motivations to be, and that it wasn't, expecting the lack of financial motivation to be more determinate. And I don't know if you covered this or not, but in terms of what their motivations are, have you unpacked that a little bit more? So you know what it's not, and then how long have you been doing this, and are people, doing a class and then taking a break or going, so how much of it is that they want to improve their own learning? Is it a service, a sort of volunteerism? Are they trying to make connection? Like what?
Yeah, it's almost as if you read the speaker notes of my slides and realized what I forgot to say. Thank you. No, actually, yeah, we asked them to report their motivations. The top three motivations were their sense of ownership over the program, that they feel like they have a role in making this program work, that they're not just the consumers of it, they are the initial body. That sense of ownership, the desire to help out their classmates, seeing people struggling on the forums and things like that and wanting to give back to it, and the desire to network more closely with professors. So the number one, not number one, but one of the critiques of this program is that a master's program in some ways is supposed to expose you to research, and in theory this is a course-based master's program. I disagree with that. We've actually made a lot of headway in allowing research to be done by online students. But when students ask, how can I actually form a relationship with a professor in a class of 500, the answer is usually we'll be their TA. And so a lot of them do it because they want to form that closer relationship.
Yes.
This is a question to Catherine. So have you ever tried using your Unhangouts tool to facilitate sort of like online office hours? Instead of having a video stream, have like a live stream of a TA answering questions, and then as ad hoc discussions come up among students, they would go into breakout rooms or something like that.
Yeah, there's actually the screenshots of the course that I showed up there is the Supply Chain Management MicroMasters at MIT, and they've been hosting sort of like every other week Q&A style sessions, sort of just like that, where the professor actually does a live wrap up and sort of talks about the topic of the week. Everyone breaks out into small groups and talks about their questions. And then they come back and post their questions in the chat, and the professor answers them live. And I think it works very well.
Is it like, do you have perhaps like metrics on sort of like effectiveness of the tool? I'm not sure.
Yeah, not probably that will be satisfactory. Most of them is sort of just, most of the research that we've done has sort of been design and user research to improve like the interface and layout of the tool and things like that. And we're trying now to sort of organize a more formal research so that we can answer those sorts of questions. But yeah, it's definitely a great question.
How do you moderate the 40? Because 40-person chat room? Like, how do people moderate in a 40-person chat room? Do they have buttons or things, or like, I'm gonna talk now, or, you know, how do they?
Just sort of like in the text chat.
Oh, not the video.
Yeah, so the videos can only support up to 10 people.
Right.
So there's never that many people to worry about.
Yes.
I think your work opens up a really important question that all of us need to look at. I think there's a yearning. If you look at the TWIV sphere, there's a yearning for massive open online seminars, as that gentleman was saying over there. This is really something that I think educators need to think about addressing. And I don't think it's impossible. I know you were talking about conversations of 6, but I think we're having national conversations on a very large scale right now about many things. And I think it wouldn't be that further a step to make those more pedagogical, to make those more erudite, and just bring in some real thoughtfulness in a massive conversation. So I like the idea of the massive open online seminar a lot. So I just wondered if anyone else here has any thoughts about that.
Actually, I can give you a couple thoughts on that, actually. I actually run one of the classes I teach in the Georgia Tech program is modeled very similarly after that. There's no video material. It's all a guided walkthrough of educational technology, of finding your path through it, guiding you how to do research in that environment. It works very well, in part because I think we do something actually very similar to what you're describing. We use Slack. I don't know if everyone's familiar with Slack, but it's a chat app. It has kind of the same features without the nice integration into some kind of live anchor, which I think is really important. But it has the same kind of separate rooms and group discussion, things like that being used for live communication. It works very well in that environment. I think the challenge is I've taken courses at MOOCs like that were structured kind of similarly. And the challenge is very often there's no easy gauge to what different people's level of commitment is. So in a program where it's gated, where you have to apply to get in and then pay tuition, you kind of know everyone here is willing to put up this amount of time, this much money. Online, you're trying to find those other people who match your level of commitment. And that can be difficult to do.
Well, boy, if you've ever taught junior high school, that's what it's like. So I think this isn't an insurmountable problem. I think, you know, it will self-select, and I think we're moving in this direction. So, thank you, all of you had great things to say.
All right, we have room for one more quick question. And
Is there any way to synthesize the text discussions? Because I think that could be quite messy, especially when there are a lot of people. But is there any maybe automatic way to pick up some very great ideas for the text?
For
the
what?
text chat.
For text, oh, sort of like what are the themes that emerge?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's it is not a smart text chat in any way. It's just very much like a stream, and you sort of experience it. And there is something kind of exciting about just seeing a bunch of people talking to each other. But I think that is another direction that would be interesting to think about, sort of like what themes emerge. Can you visualize those in some way so that the community knows what it's talking about or what it's interested in? Yeah, and that's very interesting.
I think that's a usability question too, but then Slack has the same issue. They've promised for a couple months now threading of this kind of conversation, so that if Yao and I are having a conversation and Catherine and are having a conversation, they're kind of split out such that we're not talking over each other. It hasn't come yet, but I think, yeah, that's exactly what would be really nice in that area.
just splitting out